Hello, everyone. I'm Mary Perk, the Executive Director of Wharton Customer Analytics and AI for Business at the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. I want to thank Tableau for the opportunity to speak with you all today about the interconnection of leadership, experiential learning, and storytelling as it relates to accelerating analytics with your companies. So, what is your largest barrier to overcome when adopting digital transformation and business intelligence? Likely, it's been amplified during these past few months of disruption in the workplace. Let's take stock of where your enterprise is today and where upstream investments can be applied to downstream barriers. These are barriers that Dan Heath might have highlighted today. Mainly, let's look at how companies are transforming their data science teams into storytellers and analytic evangelists, and why it's so important and more important than ever to weave these investments into the culture and fabric of your company. At Wharton Customer Analytics, our mantra is learning by doing. The era of big data has energized the Wharton's approach to analytics education. While analytics is a relatively new concentration and area of study at universities nationwide, it is a surging area of interest at Wharton and at our centers. We provide ideal environments for collaboration between industry, students, and academics. Our programs are customized research projects to generate real business value that leverage both insights and the Penn Wharton talent who represent future data-driven decision makers. We are at the intersection of academics and industry. It's so exciting because there are so many different problems and challenges that companies have, and we have so much talent that we'd like to match those two up. We operate under three main pillars. We take your company challenges and data sets, and we make sure that our student teams transform with your company experts, transform that business thinking, translate those research findings, and all the while we are forming these new talented managers that are going out into the workplace with your particular problems that you're bringing to us. We have conducted over 50 corporate research projects. We have access to over 3,700 academic researchers globally. We are affiliated with 500 publishers, and we've had over 1,000 students work on our projects. Here is a sample about some of the companies that we have worked with in the past. They range from Comcast to Hershey's. So we have entertainment to CPG. We have retailers. We have high tech. We have nonprofits. We work with B2B to B2C nonprofits. So like everywhere else, analytics is everywhere. And we also make sure that the customer analytics covers all those different industry verticals. Now let's take a look at where analytics was 10 years ago, like a straight railway. It was a pipeline of data that would come in to a variety of different Excel spreadsheets. But there's been huge transformation, as we know, and more than likely your analytics in your organizations look much closer to something like this. Train tracks crossing, intersections, very, very messy. This is especially true in the era of COVID. Big data analytics, artificial intelligence have moved from emerging technologies and these straight pathways to very complex pipelines of data that intersect with every department of your company. Now, along with that, let's take that apart and really look at people, process, technology, and data. A few years back, we would normally see analysts in a cubicle taking data from Excel spreadsheets and mashing it into PowerPoints, and typically staying in these cubicles and then sending the decks, or printing the decks, actually. They weren't even digitized. And now we see our analysts in front, explaining what the problem is and the data that supports that problem and how potentially the solution that should be investigated going forward. Those analysts should be helping to lead the conversations and be in front of the decision makers. Next, let's look at processes and how those have transformed. Processes were very unclear. Each department would pick a different platform. These platforms wouldn't talk to one another. The data was disparate, and there was always different decisions coming out of it. Where we figured out now, we have these data lakes, the cloud, all this different technology that allows the platforms to be interconnected and allow business processes to actually ensure action around one source of truth. Technology, like I mentioned, very disconnected, very focused on individual problems, whereas now we're very much connected across company-wide enterprise platforms. There's plug and play machine learning languages are easier than ever. There's a wide variety of machine language platforms and models that can be used across any platform. And the models themselves are really not the most difficult thing in analytics. It is actually our next topic, which is data. Big data. Big data is not, we thought big data, that topic would finally die out, and it hasn't. It's going to continue to grow. It's because the velocity of the data continues to come out like a fire hose. We're enamored with data. We think we want more data. We need more data. We don't know what data to collect. We got to collect it all because we're not sure what we'll need in a year from now. And it continues to fuel all the insights that inform the path, the growth of the company, but it also is costly. It's hard to organize, and it can be very tiring in terms of what data you need. So with that, I also want to emphasize the dichotomy between big data and analytic talent. To me, across the process, people, process, technology, and data, the two focused things I think everyone is looking at now is data keeps growing. We know that you've heard many of these different quotes, 2 times, it doubles every 3 years. So from digital, because of all of our digital resources, this is sourced by McKinsey. But on the opposite end, we're seeing that there's a shortage. They're predicted to have a 1.5 million data scientists or analyst jobs by 2023. It's going to continue to grow by 23%, which doesn't surprise you that then 75% of companies say they're missing the skills and technology to make best use of the data. So on one spectrum, we have too much data, but not enough talent to make sense of that data to have good concrete insights. So what I'd like to do now is actually, I'm going to make a few assumptions. I'm assuming most of you have an analytics organization. You are migrating data to the cloud. You've hired analysts that know machine language, but there, so at this point, that's kind of the table stakes. But what I think companies really need to be focused on now are 3 things. 1, leadership. Is leadership in the core businesses? And is there someone who really understands the value of better data decision making? Secondly, are there champions within the C-suite that will help with the implementation of analytics and securing the talent that's needed and the data-driven culture within the company? And thirdly, is there a recurring model of learning by doing, which will help identify the projects that a variety of people throughout the company can be involved in? You can have multidisciplinary approaches and multidisciplinary individuals involved in that to have the most creativity and impact in the company. Those are 3 areas that I think companies should begin to focus on. So we talked about, Dan Heath talks about these downstream barriers in his book, specifically lack of ownership, problem blindness, and tunneling. I think these are really appropriate within analytics, and I think everyone can identify what these are. And I believe that when you actually look upstream, as Dan also alludes to in his book, you can eliminate these downstream barriers. And my challenge to you all is to actually invest in 3 of these tactics. One is leadership, which I'm sure you've heard a lot about, but it's very specific. So leadership under analytics and data decision making, experiential learning, which leaders need to support, and then storytelling, which people will gain through experiential learning. So we'll go through each of these. And we'll go through them with case studies that we have done at Wharton Customer Analytics to make this come to life, and you'll have more context around it. We'll look at a conglomerate called Majid Alpha Time, based in Dubai. We'll look at Under for Leadership. We'll look at an Evite case study in Fulton Bank for experiential learning, and then electronic arts for Madden. But that's kind of our path. And the first thing I'd like to do is I'd like for us to listen to Raghu Iyengar. He's a faculty director for customer analytics and a marketing faculty at Wharton. And then Jeff Garrett, who was the dean at Wharton. He just recently left to go to USC, lead USC. Both of them have a little bit to talk about leadership. So let's hear what they have to say.
Think about analytics. It should come from the top. That people in the organization firmly believe that good data-driven decisions, even though it might be difficult, it might have a lot of resistance, that is the way forward.
Better leaders make better decisions, and I think better decisions are better informed decisions, and the way to make better informed decisions is to be able to work with data scientists on unlimited data.
So I think they both eloquently really captured really how important leadership is in leading how you manage your data and how you use data to make those informed decisions. So we worked with a company called Majid Alpha Time. They're a conglomerate, like I stated, in the Middle East, specifically in Dubai, and they had four entities. In fact, people say that when you're in Dubai, more than likely they have loaned you money through credit card. You have probably eaten with them at Carrefour, which is like a Costco type of retailer. You've probably been entertained by them at one of their movie theaters, and you've shopped with them in one of their shopping malls. So they have data, loads of data. And each of these entities were always looking at exactly what they should be accomplishing. And a leader in Majid Alpha Time said, we need to look at all this data. This is really a lot bigger than what we are. We would also like people outside of our company to look at this and really challenge us with new ideas of how we can possibly add value with our data across our different entities. And so in doing that, they actually, as soon as the business leaders realized this, they said, we need to be also responsible for the ROI of the analysis. So the leadership said, we're going to do this, but then you're coming to these presentations, and then you're going to help implement the ROI that we've invested in this analysis. And this is key for leaders. Leaders can plan to do these things, but they have to plan and challenge their associates to deliver the ROI of the analytics. And so it was a very much of a planned endeavor. 10 academic research groups presented these 6. There was actually more than this, but these are the 6 I wanted to highlight to the Majid Alpha Time leadership. And it was all of them were very innovative. They also used data from each of these different entities. And one of the key ones that really resonated with the team was how they looked at their shopping data from Carrefour and realized they could connect it as a predictor to their credit card company. And it was actually an indicator of spend and default, where they actually had some of that valuable data that they did not necessarily need to buy from an outside company. It was really resonant right within their own data sets. Other things that I found interesting that they looked at were net promoter scores and how they were able to look at it with cross-buying between theaters, the mall, the grocery retailer, and connect all that. They looked at synergizing box office and the box office movies with concessions to maximize overall revenues of the theater. So there was a wide variety of cross-synergistic outcomes that came from this particular project. Now we're going to talk with Victor Cho.
Having real-world data and building skill sets in the younger generation, I think, is super critical. It's probably the single biggest gap that I see in employees coming through the business at the meta level is they cannot synthesize complex data and and turn it into results and insights. They just get bogged down in the complexity. So I think what Wharton is doing is absolutely amazing.
So Victor, he's the CEO of Evite, and he realized when he was getting analytic talent and when he's talked to other people within the industry, he's like, just what he said in his talk. He said the students need to get messy with this data. People, when they're coming in, they need to already know some of the questions that they need to ask. How can we help train some of these people coming into the industry? And so he said, I'm going to give you a bunch of data. And we said, okay, let's do a datathon. He said, I need to know how to create even more revenue stream with my data. And he said, is it possible that we can actually understand how to convert host or guest to host and then host to premium host, and how that would affect their ad revenue? So Evite provided data across a variety of their parties, how, like seasonal events like beach parties, barbecues, annual events like Father's Day, and then social events such as like engagement parties. And then teams had 2 weeks using machine learning languages such as R and Python, and developed a wide variety of models, customer lifetime value models, clustering models, and presented that to the Evite team. And Evite ended up, like I said, picking a model in which they were able to predict the guests within certain geographic area and within certain parties that they were most likely to become hosts, and those to become premium hosts, so that then they were able to have better targeted ad revenue. Now, another company that's doing something similar in terms of experiential learning, they're investing not only in future students with a datathon that they're offering at Wharton, but they're also investing in their employees. And along with the training that they're doing at Fulton Bank, they're also going to do a datathon. So Fulton Bank is a Northeast regional bank, and they operate in a variety of different states: Pennsylvania, Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, and Virginia. They have 250 branch outlets, and so and a wide variety of offerings. So they have, commercial banking, investment advisors, mortgage services, and then obviously consumer lending. What they're going to do is they went to all their different departments, similar to what Majid Al-Time did, and asked for specific questions that they need to be answering with their data, but they can't. And we're curating those questions, curating the data, and we will be having a datathon that not only university students will be participating in, but the bank employees will be able to sign up and participate in. And this will be part of their overall training for employees to become more entrenched in analytics and continue to foster the culture of analytics. So next, what I'd like to do is showcase one more video by John Wang, and he will explain how storytelling really is important in the whole area of action and impact and analytics.
There's a bit of a disconnect between the data that we generate and the end result, which may actually be years later in terms of a commercialization opportunity. You kind of have to weave that story and connect the dots for people, because from analytics to action to impact, you've got to be able to have a very tight story around that.
So we tell this to our students all the time. If you can create a model, but if you don't understand how that model relates to the business question that you're trying to solve, or what a company is capable of doing, the model doesn't have the full value. And so we really encourage the students in our programs to work very closely with the companies to understand exactly why they are trying to solve that question, and when they develop the model, how that will impact the business. And a company that did this very well was Electronic Arts. In fact, I would say they're the trifecta of these case studies, because this will demonstrate leadership at the top, endorsing experiential learning, and fostering storytelling to uncover talent. So what they did was, over a 5-year period, they were able, through these different programs that we'll review, I just want to give you the punchline because it's so impressive, they decreased their analyst turnover rate from 19% to 8%. They also, all the while, they decreased their marketing and advertising spend from 22% to 11% and increased their revenue during that time by decreasing marketing spend. Like, a lot of people don't decrease marketing spend and increase revenue, but they did this because they were smarter about where they placed the marketing and advertising dollars, because they had better insights into their data, because their analysts and people throughout the company were able to build on a different skill set because of the support they were getting. And how they did that where they supported four main themes in the company. One, they asked the right questions. They always emphasize ask the right questions. They integrated analytics across the enterprise. It was not just within IT. They also were a huge proponent of test and learn, and I'll go into that very specifically. I mean, that's a big investment, as you know. That is not cheap, but it paid off in spades, as you can see what I just showcased to you in just a little bit ago. And they promoted people who were good storytellers. So these are the specific examples to those 4 themes and how they did that. I call it the secret sauce of electronic arts. They created an analytics council, and that was leadership from all the different departments. And along that council, besides talking about analytics, they also were responsible for talent development. So they were responsible for understanding how the talent was doing, what was the vibe with the analysts, what could they improve, and then also trying to search for more people that were interested in analytics. They also, similar to what Fulton Bank did, they had an analytics-thon. So you can think of it similar to a Datathon, and that was company-wide. Anyone could participate in it. They made it fresh and friendly for everyone to dabble in analytics and let everyone know that it wasn't some mystery thing and you had to have coding to be a part of it. They had job family matrices, which was really helped in the career development plans and skills assessment specifically around analytics. So very, very focused in that. And then they created an analytics habit. It was a weekly half-hour meeting, stand-up meeting that they were very strict. Well, they were disciplined on report, reward, and remind. And they limited it to 4 KPIs, so they didn't overcomplicate things. They up-leveled their analysts to demonstrate storytelling. If they provided opportunities for young analysts to be in front of the C-suite. Not everyone made a great impression, but there were definitely many that they were able to kind of up-level and push forward in understanding, being subject matter expert, being analysts, and then becoming subject matter experts and telling the story within their organization. And then finally, one of the biggest investments was building a test and learn pipeline. They did this because, like many companies, they had a lot of digital media that they could do test and learn, and they do it all the time. There's a lot of companies that do this, but they made a big investment and they've incorporated it into all their different tactics at Electronic Arts. So one thing I would like to do, though, is point out one of the biggest things I learned from Zach was about the investment in test and learn. They actually took Norway, they did a major test where in Norway they stopped all of their marketing and advertising spend for I think he said a year. And that was a training data set that they were able to look at and compare to, I think it was either Sweden or Denmark. So they had that data set. It was a painful data set to create, in that there was some losses in their revenues, But he said they learned quite a bit from that, and they've made it up, tenfold because of being smarter in where they do make those investments. One of Zach's best quotes that he shared with us is this: customers and data do not live in the boundaries of your organization. And if you don't cross those boundaries, you can't learn. So within this, he is such a realist because he knows that customers are messy, data is messy, they don't stay in their own swim lanes. And if you don't allow your teams to actually experiment in different swim lanes, it's very hard to have discovery and innovation. So he was a big supporter of that, along with his teams. So before we go, I'd like to leave you with a summary of how I really think leadership is one of the key aspects of how a company can not only foster experiential learning, but really create those storytellers that are so necessary within analytics. And it's through that leadership, hopefully through these case studies, you've seen how it's that evangelization and support for analytics and really allowing all people within the organization to touch and feel analytics, and that it's also their responsibility to become more familiar with analytics and what their skill set might be within that, and offering them some experiential learning opportunities to do that. Also, this helps train and inspire those storytellers, put those young storytellers in front of these executives so that they can understand how powerful their stories can be. Also, so that senior leaders see how important the analytics support those stories. And with that, you can also foster and identify the future leaders across the company, but very specifically within the analytics and data frameworks. So I hope that through our time today, you have learned a lot about what you can do in terms of upstream investments to eliminate downstream barriers. If you would like to contact me, here's my contact information. I'm happy to also put you in touch with any of the faculty members at Wharton. It would be great for you to reach out, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you.